This morning we have Kris Singh as our special guest. He's going to be talking to you about arranging for the band that we have, kind of setting us up with some ideas there and showcasing some stuff. But we also have Eric Himes, who's going to be our host. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Eric, how about you go ahead and introduce Kris for us?
Hey, virtual CMI, this is an exciting day. We have a very special guest, Kris Singh, who's a friend of mine from New Zealand, and I've been privileged to see Kris in action, leading in multiple facets over the years, particularly with worship bands. He leads a worship band called Bearers, which you should definitely check out. They're awesome, and their sound is really cool and upbeat and contemplative and fancy and all sorts of good stuff. So if you're looking for an extra shot of joy, I know Kris won't say this, but I will say this. The Bearers is awesome, and you should check them out today. But Kris is the creative resource developer for the Creative Ministries Department for the New Zealand, Fiji, and Tonga territory. And I believe this is his North American teaching debut. And we're really blessed to have him. He is great. And there's a lot for you to learn. We've heard some of his presentation already, and there's really good content here. So we will be better for it. I'm going to hand it off to Kris, and I can't wait to hear what we'll experience together.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. And yeah, it's my pleasure, everyone. Kia ora koutou. My name is Kris Singh, and I'm from New Zealand. So I just want to put a disclaimer on this presentation. If you miss something because of my accent, they're recording it and they will be subtitling it. So you should be good. Hopefully you'll be able to understand me, but please feel free to ask questions throughout. Eric's going to be monitoring the chat. I don't want to be a talking head. I want to be hearing from you guys, because I think when you have lots of people in a room, you get to the heart of the issues that people want to hear about a lot quicker than if I just pretend to know what you need. So please use the chat function to ask your questions, and we'll pause and take those. So Eric, feel free as well to jump in if you want to do that. Cool. So I'll just give you a bit of background about me. Yeah, so Eric mentioned I work for the Creative Ministries Department, and he left out one of the countries of our territory. We've just added the Samoa islands to.
It's on me, my bad.
But that's okay. Yeah, so we're in the South Pacific here. Yeah, I work for the Creative Ministries Department, developing resources to help, I guess you call them praise bands, but in all facets of creative arts, and that comes out in our annual Creative Arts Camp, Amplify, which we run each year, which is kind of like, yeah, Eric's repping the t-shirt, and he's come as our special guest twice now, so he's pretty lucky. It doesn't happen often. So yeah, we cover a lot. Our department does film, we do music, we do events, and so this is a real privilege for me to be a part of, and I want to thank you for having me, Josh, and Eric as well. So let's just get into it, So we're talking about arranging, specifically we're talking about arranging for the band that you have, and this is interesting because there's so many expressions of the Salvation Army. You know, every corps is different, and they have different strengths, and unfortunately they have different weaknesses as well. And so we're going to try and examine how we can play up our strengths and examine our weaknesses, and talk about using what's in our hands. So a good place to start, I think, anywhere, is to establish your goals. It's important to establish goals from the outset, because it gives you a point of reference, and it gives you a finish line to shoot for. And specifically in this scenario of arranging, there's a few things we can ask ourselves. So here are some questions. How's my team contributing to the overall flow and energy of the service? You know, we have a role to do sometimes, and We want to be contributing to the flow and energy of a service. Am I meeting the needs of the service stakeholder? So this could be your core officer, your leaders, your event organizers. Usually we have a particular thing we're trying to achieve, and we need to meet the needs of the people who are asking us to do the job. So are we meeting their criteria? And do we have any practical limitations that will stop us from achieving our goals? And this is probably going to be true, that there's going to be some form of limitation around your equipment, your people, your facilities. And so it's good to identify that as part of setting a goal, like what's going to limit us from achieving these goals. And then finally, are there creative ways to deal with these limitations? So we're going to talk about some of those limitations and some of the ways that we can get over them. So firstly, I want to encourage you to use what's in your hands. Now, if we're being really real here, a lot of our core and center don't have a lot to work with. My core here in Miramar in New Zealand, we're a great core, but we meet in a gym. We have a mobile pack in, pack down. We don't have any fallback speakers or, monitoring. And so we really have to use what's in our hands. We have to use what we have available to us. And that includes people, that includes gear. But, I believe that we can create some really amazing art with very little. And an example I thought of when I was putting this together was a short story, and it's only 6 words. It's sometimes attributed to Ernest Hemingway. And it says, "For sale, baby shoes never worn." And with those 6 words, he's created a really powerful, a really evocative, and a really mysterious piece of art. He's created something that makes us wonder, it makes us think, it makes us explore how we feel. And I think he's done that so well with so little. So yeah, it forces us, practical limitations force us to think outside of the box. So limitations eliminate distractions and force the most direct path towards an outcome. So we waste less time on peripheral or outside of problems and more time on the task at hand. Limitations force us to be content with what we produce. And I think about, like, when is a piece of art ever done? When does an artist say, "Oh yeah, I'm finished painting this piece"? Or when does a songwriter say, "Yep, this song is done"? The truth is that something can be worked on and worked on and worked on into oblivion and never be really done, and we're never really content with it. So limitations give us kind of like a finish line to work towards. And I believe there's a really strong sense of satisfaction knowing you achieved a difficult goal with what you have in your hands. It's a real sense of accomplishment and pride. And I was thinking about the story of the widow who brings her one coin, and Jesus sees this and says, you gave out of your abundance, but this widow gave everything she had. The offering was pleasing to God, and that's all he wants us to do. He wants us to offer what we have with a generous, sacrificial attitude. So use what's in your hands. Whatever you have is enough. Cool. So before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty of arranging, do we have any questions coming up, Eric, or anything interesting?
How brave you are for being on at 3:11 in the morning, but not too much.
That's all good. All right, we'll keep moving on. So I want to just, before we go into the nuts and bolts of arranging, I want to talk about our perceptions, because I think a significant issue for us as the Salvation Army, but as a wider church as well, is when it comes to this idea of replicating and performing a song that's it's a curated version of reality. You know, a lot of our understanding of worship music is based on the most polished, the most perfect version of a song that you'll hear. You know, the latest release from a Hillsong or an Elevation, it's highly layered. It's a massive production. It's got a ton of studio polish. And it's impossible to replicate in a smaller setting. Having said that, I'm not demonizing these guys. These guys are just operating in a different sphere, right? They're operating. They have different goals to us, right? They've established different goals, and the thing is, we can't base our local expressions, our local settings, on their global settings. You know, these are global churches. And again, to be fair to these guys, they probably are acknowledging this because you're seeing churches like these put out stripped back versions of their songs, probably because they realize that people are using their music and they want it to be approachable. But we just need to make sure we put the right lenses on when we look at these big, huge songs. And we'll look at some foundational elements of these songs, what to look for. So yeah, we've got some bullets here just to kind of sum that up. But yeah, understanding of worship music is easily influenced by the most polished, the most perfect version of a song. And sometimes our goals won't align with those churches, and that's okay. But we need to have the right lenses on. And it does include humility. It may be that a song is just out of reach for the people, the instruments, the gear, the band that you have. And that's okay. The cool thing is that there isn't just one worship song per topic. You know, there's thousands of songs out there. So yeah, let's be self-aware and have discernment around that. And then finally, before we get into the nitty-gritty, is I want us to acknowledge our artistry. I think it's so important to realize that we have our own unique voice. And, you know, we've been created unique for a reason. And we're not trying to compare. We're not trying to be something we're not. We're trying to be who God's called us to be, using the gifts and the talents that He's equipped us to have. Because when you play the comparison game, you lose. If you're looking at a Hillsong or an Elevation or something similar, there's always going to be a sense of insignificance or inadequacy. If you're constantly comparing, it's self-defeating. It's not very helpful. So take what you can from them and add it to what you're able to do. You don't need to be someone else. You need to be you. Cool. So, take what you can. Great. So we're going to move into some foundational kind of stuff that, and I'll give you some tips on how to apply these things to your setting. So I, as Eric mentioned before, I manage Bearers, which is a territorial expression of worship for our youth. This came out of Amplify, actually, and it's pretty cool. And we've released a couple of EPs and an album. So I'm just going to go through, I'm just going to swap my screen here. I'm going to play you a section of the song Defined. And this is the full mix. This is like everything, the synths, the guitars. And then what we're going to do is we're going to deconstruct this, and then I'm going to show you how we recontextualized it for an acoustic setting with a smaller group. So let's take a listen. I'll play it maybe up to the verse, the end of the chorus, sorry. Actually, let's go from, okay. Here we go. I'll just play some of these layers through as well. show you how many layers and things are going on here. And I'll just play one chorus with everything in, and just get a sense of the song at its biggest.
Tracing over every single line, filling empty spaces in my mind. You saw me and you said that I am good.
Cool. So that's the full mix of Defined. That's with everything in. You guys can see my presentation now. Cool. Yeah, cool. Awesome. So the first foundational element of a song is rhythm. And kind of if you had a dictionary definition, a rhythm is a recurring and a regulated motion of or movement. In music, we think of rhythm as an expression of timing. And it's usually marked by strong and weak sounds and silence. The rhythm of a song helps us to define the musical feel of a song. Now, feel's a really difficult thing to describe, but we'll get there. So firstly, rhythm informs the genre and the structure. So your percussive elements are really important in pushing the best style for your team. For instance, you might have a set of bongos or congas. That might push your direction towards more of a Latin or a Cuban influence. Something like a single electric piano might need to create rhythm using space or rests in the music, and that kind of lends it more to a kind of a minimalist style. As I said, tempo helps define feel. So establishing a tempo works really well in order to create feel, because feel creates character, and that's really what elevates a bland arrangement from a good arrangement. Character is what separates a song from that 4-chord grind, when it's just bless the Lord, oh my soul, over and over and over and over. It turns it into something with identity and something with character. And so the percussive nature of rhythm is really helpful in doing that. So in Defined, this is the first count off. This is an acoustic session we did for the album, and I'll talk more about it. But for this acoustic session, we didn't play to a click track, so it wasn't a what's the word I'm looking for? A structured performance. We wanted to retain and give it more of an organic and a human feel. But because I wanted to retain some of the energy of the original song, I really only pushed the tempo back about 10 beats per minute. So it's not slow, but it's not fast. I'll play you the first sort of few measures of this, and then I'll talk about it. Take 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. So you can see there that the feel is different, the character is different, and it's in service of a goal. And the goal was to retain some of the synth flavor of the song, because that's kind of synonymous with what Beers is about. Like, that's kind of our character, that's our sound. But I also really wanted to emphasize Emma, who's the vocalist, the timbre and the range of her vocals. So I really leant heavily into that sort of minimal singer-songwriter vibe. And that sample pad just gave it a slight edge, but really it's driven by her vocal and by the acoustic guitar. So it's in service of a goal. And we talked about establishing a goal before, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. So great. Do we have any questions, Eric?
Yes. So on that theme of service of a goal, Natalia asks, how do you determine the right key to sing a congregational song?
Awesome. We're getting there. So we'll talk about that through melody and harmony.
Okay, great.
Cool. So I'll answer that now. So melody is a combination of rhythm and tones. And when we put them together, it forms a phrase. And harmony refers to pitch or frequencies that occur simultaneously. So if you think about melody as the horizontal, like you're reading a piece of music, and melody goes this way, harmony is the vertical aspect of music. It's the construction of chords that go up the stave line. We're adding concurrent items. Melodies is so important to church music, and it probably has its own seminar worth of things to talk about. It kind of crosses into different fields. It crosses into songwriting and things like that. But the thing with a church setting is that we need to have a melody that's designed for as many people to engage with it as possible. And that comes with keys, right? I actually have a differing opinion when it comes to melody than a lot of worship leaders. And like Eric, I don't know if you want to jump on this, but I think we spend a lot of time thinking about who can sing what notes and less behind the heart of why we worship in the first place. You know, I think of my wife, and she can't really sing, but it's not important for her to be able to hit the notes. It's more important that she has a heart of worship and acknowledges the meaning and the artistry behind the words. You know, to her, the melody is secondary. So I don't know what you think about that, Eric, but yeah, that's just a little aside. What do you think?
Well, I think this whole topic kind of lends itself to the answer, because if you have it's arranging for the band that you have, and if your singers all have very high voices or very low voices, then you kind of meet them where they're at, and you hope. I mean, I may be dinged on this, but you just hope that the congregation can. We're in service of the congregation, obviously, but if your band can't sing the songs that you're playing, it'll be a rough go leading that as well. So
Yeah.
I think there's a balance in serving the congregation, certainly, but then also the main topic that you're talking about, which is using the band, playing the hand that you're dealt, basically, in terms of your personnel and on your worship team. So there's definitely a tension there.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm not. I don't want to discard the fact that we need to be able to actually perform our roles, but yeah, it crosses over into some leadership stuff and some stuff around this heart of worship and this idea that whatever we bring, if we bring it with excellence, with what we have in our hands, that's enough, and our congregations accept that as pleasing, you know. And there's tension there, but anyway, let's move on. So yeah, melody should be approachable. So yeah, establish a key that for the most part is comfortable. Now, finding a key that fits every type of voice is, to me, like finding a pair of pants that fits everyone. You're not going to please everyone, unfortunately. Everyone's got a different voice, everyone's got a different range, but your singers can influence this choice. So having a key that's relatively comfortable, if it's a male-led song or a female-led song or a tenor range-led song, but refer to your goals again. Is this performative? You know, are you performing a song rather than expecting people to join in with you, that can influence the key, because then you might have a different set of higher notes or lower notes to hit. So yeah, use the singers you have available to you. If they have a certain range, work to that as a starting point. When you have more resources, maybe you have more singers, you can kind of get a bit more flexible around what keys you're able to use. But yeah, use what's in your hands. It's what you have, and it's enough. You don't need to be something that you're not. Yeah, the guts of a song are found in its chord structure and its melody. Yeah, like as if you dig into a mix deep enough, you're just going to find chords and a melody. That's the core component of a song, and that's a great place to start from when you're looking to arrange something. And be humble in your song choice. Sometimes it's just not going to be doable in your setting. That's okay. You don't have to be able to perform every song exactly the way it's intended. So again, we'll refer back to Define now. The acoustic version, I moved from F, the key of F, to the key of A. And again, this is in service of a goal to give Emma some room to really stretch her vocal chops. So you can hear in this clip that the difference between the first and the second verse highlights her range, and also gives her room to push in the choruses. That did mean we had to change some of the melodies around a little bit, and there's no harmony here. And that's, again, on purpose. I could have sung with her, but I wanted to keep it sparse and stripped back so that she could carry it herself. So let's have a listen to that.
When nights are long and days are lonely, you will not go. And when my world feels tired to how I'm feeling, you let me know that when you made me, you claimed me, and didn't waste a thing. I carry your image, your favor, the reflection of the King. So I will declare to the night, in every way that I define, from all of creation, God, you chose me.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good example. That would be too high for most congregations. Her range is very, but that wasn't what you were doing. You were trying to redefine the song and different style and for the singer. Yeah, good example, definitely.
Yeah, so yeah, I did want to point that out, just in case anyone missed it. But this isn't really designed for people to sing along to. It's more of a reflective thing, and again, it's in service of a goal, right? So if I was picking a key that I was hoping people could sing along to, I might pick something different. But yeah, it's in service of a goal. Cool. So before we move on to lyrics, how are we in the chat, Eric? Have we got any?
We may tackle this later, but it's another good question from Natalia. She says, "What songs do you integrate brass instruments into?"
Great question. I haven't actually touched on brass, sorry, but I'll try and answer that now. Again, it's what you have in your hands. You might not have a full brass band. You may, I guess your demographics are probably different to mine. My corps doesn't have a brass band, and so we don't really engage with that. Some corps do have a full brass band, and the corps just down the road from us in the central city, they integrate brass and their worship team together a lot. it's an area where there's some development to do. You know, you got people writing arrangements for brass and worship or praise band stuff that's coming out, and that might be something that one of the other presenters might have resources around that. But I can actually have a poke around because my boss does some arrangements for brass as well, and include that with the resource pack that's going out with this presentation. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I probably couldn't cover it a lot in this setting, but it's a good question. Thanks for asking it, because there's a lot of intricacies in arranging brass, particularly with instrumentation, which I'll talk about now. Whoops. Sorry, actually, I'll go back to lyrics. So I'm not going to focus on lyrics too much because really lyrics are pretty easy to scale up and down. They're not size dependent. But yeah, if rhythm and harmony and melody are the how, then lyrics are the why. You know, lyrics are what you want to say, and they communicate an idea through human language. So we won't go into too much about choosing songs based on the lyrics. But it's definitely something we need to consider when we pick songs is, are the lyrics affirming, are they life-giving, et cetera, for our churches. Yeah, instrumentation. Now, this is the thing that's really going to challenge us when it comes to arrangement. It's the area where you need to be the most creative, and particularly how you use what's in your hands. And unfortunately, again, I can't offer you a silver bullet solution, but like I've said before, you can make a lot happen with very little. So instead of giving you like how-tos, I've just got some questions for you to consider around your instrumentation. So the first is, what type of instruments do I have to express the chords that I need to? A piano is going to express chords differently than a guitar. A piano has more notes, it's got a wider range available to it. A guitar has you know, like a restricted range, or more restricted than piano. So what kind of instruments chordally do I have available where I can express the music that I need to? How do my different instruments work sonically together? And do their timbres complement each other? Now, timbre is just a word that refers to the quality of a sound. What is the characteristics of a sound? And you might have combinations like a guitar and a keyboard and a bass, but you might have something really wacky like a violin and drums. Now, how do the different instruments work sonically together, and can we find space for both of them to work simultaneously? So with the example of a keyboard and bass, for instance, a keyboard has a really wide range, which also happens to cover what the bass is doing in the bottom register. So that informs our arrangement, because now the keyboard has got territory that it wants to stay out of because it's got a bass to cover it. So we want to think about how our instruments work sonically or audioily. What's the word I'm looking for? Sonically will do. I've just invented a new word. Yeah. What kind of techniques are available with the instruments that I have? Now, again, an acoustic guitar is a great example. There's a few different ways to sound a note or a sound a chord from an acoustic guitar. Are they going to pick during a verse? You know, or are they going to palm mute? Are they going to strum using their fingernails versus a pick? Are they going to do flamenco style? I might have a drummer, but do I need a full drum kit? You know, will my keys player play simple chords with simple voicings, or do they need to cover more space? Think about what techniques in terms of playing the instrument physically that are available to you with the instruments that you have. What kind of textures can I create? Now, this is a cool one. This is something that I find really fun. think about what sounds are available to you with your instrument. You know, you might have a multi-effects pedal if you're a guitarist, but you know, it doesn't have to be that multi-effects units are restricted to guitarists. You know, you can run a vocal mic through that and come up with some really cool stuff. But yeah, more often than not, a keyboard sitting around at our core is probably only if you use the pad in the piano setting. But there might be hundreds of cool sounds on board that keyboard, more than you realize. So have you explored the textures that you can create using the instruments that are available to you? And this kind of ties into it, but how can I get multiple uses out of a single player? So you might only have a couple of singers, but can a singer add hand claps or finger snaps into a microphone? Can my acoustic guitar player go folk and play kick drum at the same time? You know, can you get multiple uses out of people? Do people have skill sets that you're not utilizing? So going back to our example with Defined, the instrumentation's really light. You know, it's 2 acoustic guitars, a sample pad, and 1 vocalist. And if you contrast this with the huge amount of layers, and like, I feel like Troy, the guy who mixes our stuff, I feel really bad for the guy because I throw 50 tracks at the guy of stuff, but we've pulled it right back, and again, it's sparse, but it's enough because it communicates the ethos, it communicates the goal. So yeah, in terms of this, yeah, it's just us, me and Ruben, who's a second guitarist here. It was just us in the room with a couple of room mics, as you can see here, and just a little bit of EQ. So let's just have a listen and think about the instrumentation that's going on here.
Tracing over every single line, filling empty spaces in my life. You saw me and you said that I am good.
Cool. And then finally, the last and probably one of the most important foundational elements to a song is dynamics. And I've got here that dynamics refer to the ebbs and flows of volume, intensity, power, and emphasis. And the use of dynamics will lift your performance regardless of the instrumentation. Utilizing dynamics is essential to make your arrangements sing. I think the main thing I want to encourage here is that you need to learn the dynamic range of your instrument or your voice. And especially, again, I'm using an example of the acoustic guitar because I feel like a lot of core, and Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of core here, that's kind of the main thing that people will lead from. You might have an acoustic guitar and a singer or something. They're really great for dynamics. You know, they actually respond to the physical playing of the player. And so, yeah, what was I going to say? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
I think you're just while you're thinking of that, I think you're right. Yeah, if we were to have a really sparse instrumentation, it would be either acoustic guitar or keyboard leading with the voice. Typically.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, that's what I was going to say. Thank you, Eric. Sometimes your singers can influence this dynamic range as well. And I think we maybe subconsciously, maybe not, but we take a lot of cues from our vocalists in terms of, and this is a performance thing, but in terms of performance, in terms of energy, we tend to lift our performances based on that, the energy we receive from singers. And so I think especially in worship context, our singers are going to be really great indicators of when a song dynamically needs to move in intensity. So singers are an essential part in that way. And then again, the use of chord voicings helps us to give different song sections different flavors. So I mentioned the 4-chord grind, you know, and everyone's heard a band where it's just 4 chords over and over and over and over and over. Different chord voicings can change repeated sections of songs to make them feel interesting and fresh.
And in the video you just showed the acoustic version, you saw Kris and then Ruben both playing acoustic guitar, but I believe Kris had the capo on the 2nd fret and was doing, you know, the same, they were playing the same chords, but the voicing sounded different because of the range of the capo.
Yeah, we did do that. And we're playing similar rhythms, but emphasizing different bits and using different chord voicings. Cool. How are we doing for time?
We've got about 15 minutes left. I have another question from the group. That's a good. So Allison asked a very good question. So she says, we're talking a lot about utilizing limited resources, but is there such a thing as too much? And when do you limit the number of people leading worship, and how do you go about doing that? So, you know, a mega band with multiple singers and instrumentation, all that kind of stuff. How do you, when is too much, and how do you deal with that, the other end of that?
That's a great question. And I'm thinking of a core now, I won't say who they are, but they have a huge band, and they actually have so many people on their worship team that they have multiple teams, and they cycle through these teams on a week by week basis. Yeah, that's a huge topic, but I think there can be a lot. So what am I trying to say? I think there can be too much depending on your setting. So if you're a congregation of like 50 people and you've got 1/5 of them on stage, you know, it always makes me laugh when there's like this tiny like 80-person congregation and there's like a 30-piece brass band and a full like songster brigade like on stage, and there's more people on stage than there are in the audience. It's not a bad thing, but it looks funny. And I think it's really important to look at your setting, look at who you're serving, what your goals are. You know, is your band there to provide, like, is a big worship experience, quote unquote, important to your leadership, to your core officer, to your core leader, whatever? Is that thick, full band sound something that you're after? As worship, sung worship in your core, is that important enough to invest lots of people into? It's really about your setting, and it's easy to overdo. Like, you know, the classic like 3 acoustic guitarists on stage kind of thing. The more you add, the more you have to mix, the more you have to find places for people, the more you have to arrange. It adds work. And there's a threshold where I believe there's a threshold where it just becomes not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with you know, like a Hillsong, you'll see people with you'll see like 5 acoustic guitars on their stage. Again, it's a different setting because I know that a lot of those singers, that's just a safety thing for them. It's because they're not used to not having something in their hands while they sing. So they're not even coming through the mix half the time. So again, it's about setting and it's about goals. But that's a great question. Actually didn't expect that because I thought everyone was coming in with I've only got a acoustic guitar and some bagpipes. What can I do?
Well, I think that's a great answer too. But you know, think of all the worship mediums that the Salvation Army is involved in. They all have their strengths and they all have their limitations. And you know, for contemporary praise and worship as it currently stands, you know, one of the limitations is there is a saturation point or a threshold where, you know, it's not helpful. Whereas brass bands and songster brigades or choruses, like you can just keep adding people and it's just nice, you know, that. But one of the strengths of contemporary praise and worship is the flexibility that, you know, when the Spirit's leading, you can jump around all over the songs. The roadmap is really flexible, whereas, you know, written music, you don't really have that
Yeah.
opportunity. But yeah, just be mindful of the limitation here is personnel, and having a rotation practically would be a really good solution. You could get a lot of people involved and then less burnout or stress,
Mhm.
and so I think that's the opportunity there.
Mhm.
Definitely. Sorry to pile on, but excellent answer.
Cool. So we're kind of closing in on the end of our time together. So I wanted to give you just some really practical um, ideas that you can take away with you. So if you're sorry, I'm just clicking around here. Um, if you wanted to leave with something that you can roll around in your head for a while. Um, yeah, so let's just go straight into it, huh? So first one's look for the hook. Look for the hook. Every song has a core idea or an interesting feature that makes it unique. Um, so when you are thinking of a song and thinking of how you can arrange it for your band, look for the hook. It could be a guitar riff, a melodic line, a rhythmic feature. It can be anything really. Something like Lion and the Lamb has a strong melodic line. The one at the start. Da, 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 da. You could build an arrangement out of that. King of Kings by Hillsong is another great one. It's got a really defined piano melody and it's got an easy structure that lends itself well to being played around with. So when you're arranging, look for the hook. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. This is really important. Don't let your perception of what worship sound like be your reality. Every song at its most basic is a progression and a melody. So look for the most simple elements of each song and strip the excess away. And as an aside, and I want to thank my wife for this point, sometimes sheet music can be really overwhelming or inaccessible to less experienced players. It's something about the way that there's so much going on a page. There's notes, there's lines and whatever. If you're finding you're struggling, just try actually just using simple chord charts first as a building block for your arrangement. That's the guts of the song. If you're baking a cake, you have core ingredients that you need to make a cake, and your cake's going to taste delicious. And you might want to add icing and sprinkles and whatever later, but it's still cake. It's still delicious. Use those building blocks, use those simple chords to build your song and then add later. Keep it simple. Listen widely. Give yourself the words you need to say what you need to. Increase your musical vocabulary. Listening and absorbing new music exposes you to ways of arranging that you might have never thought existed. If a song seems overwhelming, like really big, really dense, really thick, look to see if there's like a cover or another version of a song that might help you to picture a song in a different way. Maybe it's better suited to your situation. Maybe there's an acoustic cover, or maybe another smaller church has arranged a song in a way that would really lend itself well to your situation. And you can even lift the arrangements fully. You don't even have to figure out some of these things. You can take what someone else has done and apply it to your context. But it's important, I mentioned before, having the right lenses on and having the right goals in place. So does this arrangement, does the Shane and Shane, 2 acoustic guitar, 2 male voice arrangement work for my context? But we're not, if we're not exposed to those artists, if we're not exposed to listening that's wider than our maybe our own bubbles, we're missing out on some cool musical ideas. It's like what reading is to your vocabulary. Listening widely, absorbing new genres of music gives us a much wider perspective, and it gives us new tools to grab onto when we go into our toolbox when we're arranging a song. So yeah, listen widely. Give yourself the words to say what you need to. Finally, practice. Sorry, but it's really unavoidable. But it doesn't have to be a chore. And I was thinking about this and how to make practice palatable, because knowing how to draw these rhythms and harmonies and melodies and dynamics from your instruments takes practice, and knowing how to mix these together comes from this practice. And yeah, I was thinking about it, and I think practice is also a way that we can offer sacrificial worship with our time as well. It's not glamorous. It's not the most glamorous part of being in a praise band, or it might feel like a chore, but it's necessary and important for our growth, and for the growth of our contributions to our teams as well. Part of worship is offering the best version of us that we can be, not being something that we're not, but being the person that God's called us to be. And so don't just think of your performance as your praise time, but think of your practice as a form of discipleship and as part of your sacrificial worship to God. It's really important. Cool. So those are the 4 takeaways. I'll just flick through them again. Look for the hook. So look for the core idea or interesting feature. Keep it simple. Look for the most simple elements of each song. Strip the excess. Listen widely. Give yourself the musical vocabulary to say what you need to. And practice. And through your practice will come the knowledge of how to mix these elements together. So before I give you some helpful tools, Eric, do we just want to open the chat one more time for a quick question, and then we'll go into some final thoughts?
So we're wrapping up, but we have one final question. So this is, it could be a short answer, but it says, if you could pick one area for Salvation Army worship bands to grow across the board, what would you hope that we learn?
That's a great question. Let me have a think about it.
Sure.
I'm back. So, oops, I haven't updated this. Okay. I'll just skip out this tool section, but there's also a bunch of resources that I've included in this spreadsheet where you can find some backing tracks to help you, and that's kind of its own probably area, but backing tracks, backing pads, that kind of thing. So just my final thoughts are: embrace the challenge of this. Being challenged means we grow beyond where we are. It makes us better musicians, better problem solvers. It makes us more resilient. And a challenge means we can't rely on our own strength, but we need to rely on those around us and on God. Embrace the fun. Maybe actually that's probably a good answer to that question, is that I wish in the Salvation Army that we would see our worship as fun and exciting. I feel like sometimes we get into rote, we get into routine, we turn up, we serve, and we forget the joy of serving that way, and we forget our what am I trying to say here? Like, that joy of like when you're jamming in a room with friends, and you're having fun. When I've embraced a challenge, I can see how it's a fun and a rewarding experience, and like turning worship songs into heavy metal versions, like crazy stuff like that. I wish we would take some of the heaviness of that responsibility off and have a sense of joy. I guess it's not a great answer, but
no,
that's something I think I wish we could embrace the fun more. And again, I want to emphasize what you have is enough. Don't feel like you need to be something that you're not. Don't play the comparison game. God's equipped you with the latent abilities you need to build your area of the body of Christ. And we're charged to nurture those gifts, but we should never strive to be something we're not. And that includes our approach to music. Tell your own story and not someone else's.
Mm.
And finally, your voice is really important. You know, the Salvation Army needs you to be speaking in this area. It needs to hear what you have to say. You know, whatever arrangements you're using, whatever you're bringing, you're building and contributing, you know, brick by brick to the kingdom of God on this side of heaven. So your voice is really important. So with that, I just want to push bearers on you real quick.
Yeah.
So these are our releases. This is our first EP, 2016. Our first full-length Home in 2018, and then the single Define that we've been looking at. So thanks for having me. Again, I really hope there was at least one thing that stuck out to you that you're able to take back to your setting. And I know we're coming from all around the world here. We're maybe different ages, different stages. So I hope there's something here. Feel free to contact me anytime through my email. You can check out my website as well if you want to. If you head on to bearersonline.com, you can get all of the resources for Defined, and that includes backing tracks and charts. So you can see how the song's put together for yourself. And after the presentation, Josh is going to send out some resources, which includes my slides. So I want to wish you guys the best for the rest of your CMI. Thanks again for having me. It's been a real pleasure to share with you. And I'll just pray with you quickly from this side of the world to wherever you are. So let's pray. God, I want to thank you that you've made a way in these times for us to connect through the people who've developed these amazing tools, God, that spark of creativity that you've imbued in each of us. God, I thank you that you've given each of us a different, unique voice. And I pray, Lord, that as we go into our settings, whatever that may look like, whether they're challenging, whether they're fun and rewarding, that you would give us perseverance, that you would give us wisdom and discernment, and that you would go before us in everything that we do. In the name of Jesus, amen.